I'm a creative. I'm an outside-the-box thinker. I'm quick to search out solutions. Natural solutions, win-win-win solutions, those are my favorite. As many of you know, life can change in an instant. Everything that I believe and do was put to the test when on April 18th, 2022, my best friend, Dr. Alan McCord, went to the gym after a great day at his chiropractic office, and he was working out, and in a room full of other people, he collapsed with a heart attack, and no one came to his aid for a really long time. He lay there with people staring at him, wondering what to do, and minutes went by before help arrived. His anoxic brain injury was severe. They called it ischemic or global. His prognosis was hopeless. His family was in shock, and his 5 kids were doing the best they could with what they had. Decisions were made that extended his life on earth. And what do you do when the medical community gives you no hope? Alan would have sought out answers in his field of medicine and consulted experts in brain health and learned from other people's success stories. So Alan's sister, Carla, and I contacted doctors around the country, his colleagues in chiropractic, functional neurologists, and other brain health experts around the country. We believed that since his kids had decided to extend his life, that a plan would be created to include alternative therapies that Alan so believed in. I found out eventually that Tracy Flintoff was doing the same thing on his behalf. When she heard about they call him Dr. Alan McCord, when she heard about his heart attack, she contacted Dr. John Harmon to seek out his advice. Dr. Harmon has a brain health clinic in Meridian, Idaho. He's familiar with the LifeWave patches and how the brain functions and much more. So I'll share more of my story in the next segment. But for now, it's my honor to introduce Dr. Harmon, a man that I've it's my honor to call friend. He's married to another woman named Carla with a K. So when we have our conversations, we talk about his Carla and my Carla. And he's the father of 8 children of his own, 2 stepchildren, grandfather of 26 children, Bachelor of Science degree in human biology. He attended the University of Utah. He graduated cum laude with a Doctor of Chiropractic from the degree of Los Angeles College of Chiropractic in 1989. He's board certified in neurofeedback and quantitative EEG. Hopefully we'll learn what all these letters mean. Right? He is an ICP, an IASIS certified practitioner, and he's a member of the IASIS Technologies Board, and we know him as the author of How to Reverse Aging, a comprehensive guide to copper peptides. He's a keynote speaker at the Energy Healing Conferences in Utah and Idaho, and the president and founder of Clear Mind Idaho. And fun fact, he played the drums in a 1970s rock band. Yeah. Most importantly, he was the marbles champion of his elementary school. Please stand and join me in a warm welcome to Dr. John Harmon.
Need some help.
There you go.
I am here today to deliver a very urgent message. Make sure this is working good. Every single person in this room is currently being subjected to extremely destructive processes in our bodies that are causing us to age faster and die younger. And every single person in this room will go into the slide of frailty and disability or not. I'm going to present some information to you today that will empower you to opt out of what I just described here and opt out of the disease management system we have in our country and to opt in to a better way of taking care of our bodies and helping them be the best they can be with energy you're already making and emitting into our surroundings. Hello, I'm Dr. John Harmon, and I'll be 70 in a couple of months, and I've been doing some reverse aging things over the last 4 years that I'm really, really excited to share with you today. So thanks for coming. I first want to ask, is there anyone in the audience who has pain who wants it gone? Okay, all right. Where are my helpers? So I'm going to have you pick out as many as you want, and then if you wouldn't mind just to go right in the back by the door, still inside. They'll hold up your hands again, and Cammie's going to pick however many people you have patches for. We have a surprise for you, and we want to make your pain go away. So volunteer if you want it gone. We are going to be talking today about how to reverse aging. That is the title of the book that I wrote. But it's not just this kind of aging with these pictures of people. These are people who are old in years, but we're not just talking about that. We're talking about aging, and we're not just talking about going from fast aging to slow aging. Today, we're actually going to be talking about reverse aging. Like that guy. I want to tell you, everything in my presentation was taken from my book, but everything in the book was taken from the research. Research has been going on since 1977. You see right here, there are 13 pages of research papers since 1977. This peptide, the GHK copper peptide, was actually discovered in 1973 by Dr. Lauren Picard. So what they did is they took old liver cells and put them into a petri dish. Does everybody know what that is? That's where you grow stuff. They put old liver cells in a petri dish and then put the GHK copper peptide in there with the old liver cells. It actually reversed the age of the old liver cells, and they started acting like young liver cells, started making their enzymes and proteins like young liver cells. They said, there must be something to that. So the research since 1977. We're not going to get all geeky today, but I do have this one thing I want to read. This is the only thing we're going to read today, but this sets the stage for understanding what the GHK copper peptide is and what it does. The use of copper peptides can be likened to turning a key and unlocking a realm of possibilities, where aging is no longer considered an inevitable decline, but a continuation of life with sustained health and vitality. It suggests a future where aging gracefully isn't just about managing our normal decline, yeah, it's getting into his 60s. He's going to get old now. But about thriving well into our golden years and enjoying our maintained state of health and life experience. You'll find that on page 275. We are going to be talking about the GHK, and unfortunately these video slides have to be right here at the computer. It's called, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the GHK copper peptide. This slide adequately or aptly kind of lays out what happens during the aging process. Not just getting older in years, but the body actually starting to decline, because we all are faced with something, right? Things happen, we got stress. Lord knows we had some in my family that shifted me away from chiropractic back in 2010 and 2011. It's not that those things happen, right? I mean, if I had people raise their hand, have you ever had a stressful event in your life? Of course we have. Everybody does. It's not that. It's what happens right here. So here's your functional capacity. Man, I'm vibrant. I'm robust. I'm working out. Things are growing great. Something happens, some stress. It's what happens right there that determines whether or not we get up to here. But if we don't have, and it's determined by how prepared is my body to handle that stress. Because some people get under stress, it causes so much oxidative stress in their body, they couldn't handle it, they didn't undo it, and then those are the people, John was under stress for 2 years, and then he got cancer and died. Something happened. Somebody didn't adapt well. So then we get up to here. It's not clear up here. Something else happens, and now we're in pre-frailty. We didn't recover even back up to here, and now we're down into dependence and disability. We all have set goals in our life. Even if it's just to go make a sandwich, that's a goal, right? It's not a very elegant goal, but I have to make a plan, get the bread, get the peanut butter, and get the jelly, and make a sandwich. But I want to talk to you something a little bit deeper today. We make plans about marriage, how many kids, where we're going to live. We make plans about our business, our work. I've always told my kids, find out or discover what it is you really love to do, and find out a way to make a living at it. And then it's not work anymore, right? So, do you have passion? Do you have joy in where you work? What kind of food am I going to eat? Am I going to include McDonald's and other, terrible, junk food? Am I going to exercise? Today, I want you to take just a few moments over the next few slides. Take your little virtual avatar. When we go expose it to different things, what does it look like if I do this? This is what separates us out from animals. We can actually go with vision and imagination and expose ourselves to different things. How does that feel? What does it feel like when I would do that? If I were to go and, I have decisions when I get up in the morning, we could go to the park, we could do this. We do it in our mind with vision and imagination. So I want you to do that today. About your older years. What are my older years going to be like? Something's going to happen if you're still alive, right? So why not think about that in advance? So that's what I want you to do today. Have you actually projected out into your older age what it's going to be like? What am I going to be when I'm old in age? So I want to spark some new thought in new parts of the brain so that you include that and with vision project out how that's going to be. So I want you to look into the crystal ball. Your future life awaits you. Design it. So each one of these slides has a few seconds to think about it. What will I be like when I'm old in age? Will I even remember who I am? It's a legitimate question. That's a biggie. It's actually one of my goals in life. Want to remember who I am. I don't want to be meeting a new person every 15 minutes. Who's my spouse? 50 first dates every day? Who are you? My grandma did that. This was back in the 80s, I think. My brother and my dad were visiting her, and she kept asking my brother, now who are you? And finally he just said, I'm Ronald Reagan. She said, oh yes, we used to date. And she wasn't trying to be funny. That's how she remembered it. So am I going to be doing this every 15 minutes? Am I going to be able to travel? If you can remember who you are and you're not meeting a person every 15 minutes in your house and you're able to travel and my joints work, your life is a lot different than someone who is not able to travel and hooked up to machines. I'm not projecting out into your life. I'm not projecting onto anyone. These are just questions we need to ask ourselves. Will my joints work without pain? Will I be dependent on someone else for my care? Or will I be independent and able to take care of myself? Will I be a passive observer? Well, that happens, I just don't have any energy. I can't exercise. Or will I be an empowered participant? Choose. Choose the life. So, what are these destructive processes that go on in our body that make us age faster and die younger? Some things we don't have control over. Can we do something about some of them? What things can we do? Today we're going to talk about that. Things that we can influence. So we're going to talk about the top things that cause us to age faster and die younger. Here are the top causes of early death and aging. Number one is telomere shortening. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, we're going to go into that just a little bit. So the telomeres, think the ending of your shoelace. And I have to tell you, Cammie was making fun of me when she was asking what I was going to wear because I had 2 sets of blue shoes. For a guy, I guess that was funny. The telomeres are like the ending of your shoelaces. They hold our chromosomes together. So there has to be something that holds them together, and then when our cell divides, they come apart, but here's part of the problem with the telomeres. You lose a little ending on it. And the good thing is the ending part is not part of our genetic information, so that is maintained until the telomeres get so short that there isn't any more of the throwaway part of the telomere, the ending of your shoelace, and then those chromosomes can't come back together and that cell dies. Whatever cell that happens is. You can go to a lab and have those measured and they will tell you, unless something happens, you're going to live about this many more years. That's how important your telomeres are. It's dependent. The ability for a cell to divide is dependent upon the length of those. Here's another view. They're actually not rounded like that. But here's a young, healthy person, and here's an older person. The telomeres are short. They've divided so many times because your body has to kill off 50 to 70 billion cells. That's almost like a monthly government budget. That's a lot. Every single day, your body kills off cells that are sick and dying. And then we replace them, unfortunately, with cells that have short telomeres as we age. Or we have so many of those. Here's another look. There's the telomere right there. That's the cap. This, we're not going to get really complex about genes and stuff, but there are certain bases that form our chromosomes. This doesn't occur in the rest of it, so they can tell when they measure these how many of those are hooked together? How many do you have left to divide? Okay, this is related to telomeres, and so we're going to talk about the effect of the GHK copper peptide on these things, but genomic instability. So genes are damaged and they can't do their job. So right here, here are the genes. We have things that affect our genes. Radiation. You know, they say don't get too many CAT scans because it's radiation and it will damage your genes. Chemical exposure. Mercury, aluminum, all the rest of the stuff. There are tens of thousands of more chemicals out in the environment when you walk outside, for heaven's sakes. Metabolic processes. That's why we have a urinary tract in the bowel, to get rid of the stuff that we don't need that actually will harm us if we don't get rid of it. So we have to get rid of stuff in order for our cells to be healthy. Harmful things in the world or your body cause damage, and the cell eventually dies because of the gene being damaged. So what does the literature say about genomic instability and telomeres? This is in the literature. This is not something I made up. This is actually studies that have been done. The GHK copper peptide resets 4,200 of our genes to a younger state. This has to do with repairing the damage. I just did an interview on the Integrative Lyme podcast. It's the largest health podcast in Idaho. That's not saying a lot compared to California, but it's still the #1 health podcast. The gal who was on there with the same interview was tested prior to starting to use the GHK copper peptide. She had the MTHFR genetic defect. She just had the test again. She doesn't have it anymore. I've never heard of that. That's a really big thing. What else does it say? Protects genes against sun damage, radiation, and chemicals. If it repairs the genes, if you get damage and it repairs the genes, and you get damage and it repairs the genes, it just makes sense that the lifespan of that cell would be extended by that. Helps to lengthen the telomeres, according to the research. So here's what happens. We have normal genes, normal expression. We have damage to the cell. We have altered genes, altered expressions. In comes the GHK. Genes are set to a younger state, normal expression, younger you. What's the next topic? Mitochondrial dysfunction. For those of you who don't know what mitochondria are, they're the little powerhouses in our cell. We have about 70 trillion cells. That's actually more like a government budget, right? 70 trillion, not billion. Each cell of those 70 trillion has 2,000 mitochondria. Most of our body weight is mitochondria. That's how important they are. So what do? They make energy for us to do stuff. In order for a cell to detox, it has to have energy. So here's what happens when you have mitochondrial dysfunction. You have low energy production. You have cells can't do their job. The cell can't be the perfect little liver cell or the perfect little bone cell, the perfect little skin cell. Something starts to misfire. Eventually, that misfiring is going to cause what? Cellular death. The cells can't detox. They don't have enough energy to detox. Cell damage occurs. They become zombie cells. For those of you who haven't heard that term, it's a relatively new term, but cells go into what's called senescence. That means I don't have enough energy to do my job because I can't make it, so give me some more energy. It's sucking up all of your energy but not doing its job. If it happens to be a kidney cell, that kidney cell can't do that filtration it's supposed to do. If it's a bone cell, that's a problem. Job it's designed to do, and so it becomes a zombie cell. If you can't detox, right here, where's it going to put the stuff? Where's it going to put the stuff? Fat tissues, liver, kidneys, brain, no more damage occurs. It leads to that funny word, apoptosis, which just means cellular death. That's how important mitochondrial function is. So what does the what does the literature say about that? It's a key component, the GHK copper peptide, of energy production in our cells. It actually influences, in the last step, cytochrome C, which is an enzyme used in the process of making ATP, or energy, and it facilitates the manufacturing of enough energy to do your job. So we all talk to people, and they get a little older, what happens? They don't have much energy. Why don't you make your own lunch? Well, I just don't have the energy, and I'm not very hungry. Their metabolism has gone down. Now their muscles start to shrink. Metabolism goes down more. They don't need that much energy, and now they're so frail they can't carry their own body around very well, and it's so tiresome. If you can maintain your mitochondrial function, it's a big deal, because it also enhances oxygenation during exercise. So if I have enough energy to do it, and now GHK helps me carry oxygen around, I can do more exercise or just go for a walk. Okay, next topic, cognitive decline. This happens to be my practice, is helping people with this, the slow disappearance of oneself, like my grandma. And it's really, really difficult to watch someone you love go through that. Brain facts. We lose, and I talk to people every single day about this, we lose about 9,000 neurons a day. I've heard different numbers, I've read different numbers. We replace somewhere between 2,000 and 4,500 of those 9,000 that we lose. Yes, there's a net loss every single day. So, what are you doing to decrease the loss, and what are you doing to increase the gain? The way we increase gain is called neuroplasticity. That means our bodies do what? They make new neurons. Because the neurons get old and they get sick and they die. We have to keep replacing those neurons, otherwise we go into senescence. We go into that aging where, shoot, the neurons I lost today, oh my gosh, that was recalling the name of my daughter. And now I lost those neurons that help me recall her name. Or we have people coming to the office, they can't recall words. They're looking at something, they can't name it. So it just depends on where you lose those 9,000 neurons a day. And are we doing things to replace them? The GHK copper peptide brain mapping study. So, not going to get really, really geeky about brains, but I do want you to understand a concept of coherence. Coherence means it's a measurement of the crosstalk between lobes, like my two frontal lobes, my two temporal lobes. Different things happen on different sides of the brain. Like if I look at this gentleman here, when I look at him, I have to decode facial expressions. Is he wearing clothes? What color are the clothes? If I was close enough, smell, your kids, your infants, smell mama. And that's all they need to identify mom, is by her smell. So we do different things. Some things are processed on the left, some on the right, but very similar. Like I can decode facial expressions on the right, but I'm looking at colors and other things, and hair and all of that. So we have to have communication right and left, or I don't process that thing. So coherence quantifies the degree of interaction or communication and shared information between brain sites. So if you have a normal amount of coherence, it's just right. If you have hypercoherence, the interaction between sites on the brain is inefficient. The more you have of that, the more autistic you are. And my practice is right off of Eagle Road. If I compare it to traffic at 5 o'clock on Eagle Road, it's the busiest street in Idaho. I'm not on Eagle Road, but I'm a block off. So it's not good to have hypercoherence, because I'm more autistic the more I have of that. Then there's So hypercoherence is too much. Then there's hypocoherence. This is really poor interaction between sites, and the more one has of that, the more in cognitive decline I am, because I have not enough communication side to side. So the study that was done, hypocoherence is not enough. The study that was done was using what my board certification is, and that's QEEG. That's looking at the electrical balance in the brain. So right here, this woman is a 77-year-old yoga instructor. This is looking at the top of the brain. Up here is where the nose would be. Just let me tell you, the red is brain on fire. Way too much stuff going on. That squirrel, 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 squirrel. I can't focus. My brain is way overactive. This was before they started. This is 3 weeks in. You can see it's starting to become, well, there's no red anymore. Then this is more even side to side. Not perfect, but it's only 6 weeks. So brain map, brain map, brain map. Before, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. Here's another one. This one is a 67-year-old manual therapist. So here she's helping everybody else, and her brain is like on fire. Very difficult focusing. Again, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. And lastly, another brain on fire and got a lot more side to side. But so what this shows is what they did is they increased the copper peptide in these participants and then measured the effects that it had on the brain on that measurement of coherence. There were other measurements, but this is the one that they were looking for. Again, hypercoherence, more autistic, hypocoherence, more in cognitive decline. So what does the GHK, what does the literature say about this? The GHK, if you don't know what the blood-brain barrier is, it's like a screen that keeps out big stuff, like bacteria, from getting into your brain. It's called the blood-brain barrier, and it holds back the things you don't want in there. So you have to get stuff in there because your brain has to make new neurons, right? It needs to make new synapses. Those are the connections, and it needs to make neurotransmitters. It has to have copper to do that. Copper is one of the most important minerals in the body. So this, the GHK acts like a chaperone. I'm carrying the copper in. You need copper up here? Yeah, we got some copper. I'm going to drop it in where the brain, when the brain's trying to make new neurons, new synapses and neurotransmitters, and another substance I'm going to talk about in a second. So it's the GHK copper peptide that delivers it through that blood-brain barrier. It's necessary to make those things. It's necessary to make BDNF. It's always confusing. So if you do something at least 45 seconds to a minute every day, your brain goes, she's done that every day. She's probably going to want to do it again, so I have an idea. Let's make some new neurons and new connections, hundreds of new connections, so she can be better at that ballerina, that dance that she's trying to learn how to do, playing that instrument. I have an idea. Let's make trillions of them, or billions, or whatever it takes to help that person do that better. That's what your brain makes when you do new tasks. That's what neuroplasticity is about. The GHK copper peptide is essential in that process of making BDNF, the stuff that you need to do to make new neurons. Remember when I said, what are you doing to stop the loss? What are you doing to increase the gains? These things are pretty good start. More about the brain. This was one of the things that was really astounding to me when I was doing the research, because I didn't know about this. So if you have a high level of GHK in your body, in your brain, and you get an injury, there's far less swelling. And most of you know, if you've had anything to do with somebody who had a spinal cord injury or brain injury, it's not the injury itself, it's the swelling that's caused in the brain around the spinal cord. My nephew was the head lifeguard at a big water park. He was on the water polo team. He went to Hawaii for his his class, his senior trip. They got to Waikiki, all of them together. It's like the movie. Instead of Charlie's Angels, it was the boys. They were running out. He dove over a wave and hit a sandbar, instantly paralyzed from the neck down. Luckily, he was less than a mile away from the world's greatest spinal trauma center, and they pumped him full of steroids. And within 2 months, he regained everything. It's because of the anti-inflammatory effect reducing the swelling. That's what saved him. Now he actually lives in Boise now. He was in California. Okay, so neuroprotective properties and helps cognitive decline. Remember that hypocoherence? It improved that measurement. Has mood stabilizing properties, is anti-anxiety. There was a study they did on rats that were really aggressive. Within 12 minutes, it decreased their aggression in that rat study. So it beneficially altered, and when I say altered, it's because I was quoting a study, beneficially altered expression of human genes involved in neuron function by 50%. That would be kind of good if you're trying to not... Now, who are you? Okay. Not only did it help maintain function, but there was far less of the neuron death when there was intracerebral hemorrhage or bleeding inside of the brain. Mood stabilizing. Okay, this is actually why I incorporated the X39 that elevates copper peptide in my protocols in my office, because it checks a big box. We're trying to check a lot of boxes to hit a home run for somebody with their brain issues, increasing their copper peptide. According to the research since 1977, it actually helps people regain normal function of their brain. Next topic, stem cell exhaustion. We lose our ability to replace cells, including stem cells. Stem cells become senescent stem cells or zombie stem cells. That's another thing I did not know until I wrote that book, doing that research. Stem cells can become zombie cells. So when I started increasing my copper peptide, I was 65, so most of mine were old and not working. Okay, so what does that mean? Stem cell exhaustion and depletion. We lose our ability to make them. We have decreased regenerative capacity, whole body. Accumulation of senescent stem cells, which all contributes to dysfunction and aging. Impaired, and this is the third thing I want to tell you about. It's the GHK that acts as a homing device to tell the stem cells where to go. So it's like a homing device. Hey, got to have some stem cells over here. Come on, bring them in. What does the research say about that specifically? The GHK in the literature activates the production of pluripotent stem cells. So what are those? Stem cells are cells that are born, kind of. They're produced, and they haven't decided what they want to be when they grow up. So they come out and they go, well, looks like we need some bone cells. Okay, I'm going to be that. Looks like we need some liver cells. I'm going to be that today. So every day, if you're pumping out these pluripotent stem cells as a result of a higher level of GHK, that's a huge deal. So how many systems in the body would that affect? Everything. Direct stem cells, we talked about that, goes towards damaged tissue. Hey, I need you over there. Call in the stem cells. We got a problem over here. Activates genes associated with stem cell production. This is what happens. The GHK copper peptide activates the very genes that are responsible to tell your body, start up the factory. It's time to make more baby stem cells. So that's why it activates our stem cell production. Kickstarts regenerative potential of stem cells. Next topic. Number one killer, cardiovascular disease, stroke, myocardial infarction. Number one killer, it's actually increasing, but a couple of measurements, a couple of things about this. For those of you who don't know what fibrinogen is, it is stuff that makes our red blood cells sticky. You have to have a little bit of it because if you bleed, if you get a cut or a rupture in an artery, you have to be able to make a clot, so you have to have some fibrinogen level, but a high fibrinogen level increases your probability of having a stroke by almost 2.5 times. There was a 10-year study done in Sweden on men, and that was the number one predictor of a stroke. High fibrinogen level. Number one cause of death globally. Whoops, I went the wrong direction. Wrong button. Okay. Talk about this. Decreased oxygen to the heart muscle causes what? Myocardial infarction. Keep that in the back of your head. In just a second. What does the research say about that? Well, a lot. GHK in heart health keeps fibrinogen synthesis to normal levels. This is so cool. GHK inhibits a gene that makes part of the fibrinogen molecule. That's the science. It inhibits a gene that codes or tells your body to make fibrinogen by inhibiting your body's ability to make too much of that fibrinogen. So it helps keep fibrinogen level. Now, I'm not making any medical claims, as you know, and when I talk about some other things, I want you to know that your experience may be a little bit different. Everybody's a little bit different. But I want to tell you about a phone call I had with, there was a man who was on lots of drugs, and Coumadin was one of them, because his blood was too thick. So they had him on Coumadin. And he called and he said, my doctor's really worried because my blood clotting factors, they're way too low now. This is terrible. So he actually had to talk to his doctor to decrease his Coumadin because his cells weren't as sticky. That's what they call thick blood. The thick part is that they're sticking together too much. And he had to decrease the prescription drug that he was taking. I met that guy, and he was really, really grateful for that. Increases myostatin gene expression. Myostatin actually inhibits heart failure. So you helps keep fibrinogen levels normal, increases myostatin that inhibits heart failure, and it helps new blood vessels form. There is a chemical chain of events that happens when we have, it's called hypoxia, or not enough oxygen in a muscle, whether it's a skeletal muscle or your heart. This is what happens. When you have a decrease in oxygen, when you're working out, you're trying, I'm gonna do 3 sets of 12 today. I'm on number 9. I can't do it. Why does that happen? Decreased oxygen and not enough energy. So, and also there's a buildup of other things that happen. So, when we have a decrease in oxygen in our heart or our skeletal muscles, there's hopefully that's not telling me to get off the stage. There's a series of events that happens, and your body is triggered. Hey, we have to send GHK out here where there's not enough oxygen. The GHK activates enzymes that are able to dissolve little holes in the muscle so that new capillaries can grow into it. Isn't that cool? That's cool to me. So I get decreased. Now, how does that apply to athletic performance? When you're working out, you're trying to build more muscle, right? Now, there aren't elegant studies about the GHK's role in building bigger muscles, but there is preliminary evidence. It's the GHK that starts the whole process. If you want bigger muscles, you have to have bigger highways to bring in the nutrition and the proteins to build collagen to make muscles bigger. What's one of the things they measure when people are in a bodybuilding contest? Ooh, look at the vascularity on that guy. His veins are huge. They score bodybuilders by their veins, their vascularity. It's the GHK copper peptide that starts that whole process in growing new capillaries into the muscle that doesn't have enough oxygen. What if it's the heart? If you don't have enough GHK, it seems plausible and reasonable that your body wouldn't get the signal, hey, there's not enough oxygen down here. Send in the troops. Can't hear you. I ain't got the resources. I can't help you. Sorry. And now what? Now, myocardial infarction. Where am I? That was on the previous slide. Okay, more. Helps prevent blood from clotting too much. Collagen and elastin. Collagen, strength of our arteries. Elastin, flexibility of our arteries. If you don't have those two things, what happens? What happens? Aneurysm. I can't expand and contract. Now, if it's rigid and not flexible, now I have a bulge or an aneurysm, or if it's bad enough, like my former brother-in-law had a dissecting aortic aneurysm, the wall was so weak it went in between the layers and then split all the way down into his femoral arteries, clear down the entire body. It was just, it was terrible. So it helps restore the integrity to the blood vessels. Helps prevent oxidation of LDL, so it decreases the risk of atherosclerosis. This isn't something I made up. This is in the research. Okay, so the company who makes the GHK stimulating phototherapy patch actually did a 6-week organ function study, and I was oddly attracted to that study. And you'll understand what that means in just a moment. Let me go back. Go back to this. So what they did, they had the participants wear a phototherapy patch that is proven in a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled study to elevate the GHK copper peptide when you wear that phototherapy patch. They did all kinds of measurements on the cardiovascular systems before, mid, and after. What they showed after 6 weeks is that the cardiovascular systems acted, that's a safe way of saying reversed in age, acted 2 months younger after 6 weeks. So I did the math. I was the guy who came up with this. For every day you wear the patch, the cardiovascular system gets a day and a third younger. That's math. As I used to tell my daughters when I was trying to show them how to do math, and I would say, math matters. So you know what I do now? Every time they're trying to figure something out that involves math, I said, see, math matters. You're just trying to figure out cups to half a cup of this and that. So math matters. So keep that in mind in just a second. We're going to go a little bit more deep into that. Cancer. I am not making claims about curing cancer. I am reporting what the literature says about the GHK and its role on cancer. So number 2, the incidence of cancer is rapidly growing globally. As again, no claims are made. Resets the programmed cellular death of some cancer cells. What does that mean? Cancer cells are cancer cells because they don't get the message, I got a neighbor on each side, I guess I don't need to divide anymore for a while until this guy dies, and then I'll make another one to take his place. So they just keep multiplying and multiplying and dividing and dividing and dividing, and they invade the neighboring tissues and kill off what's next door. That's a cancer cells. The GHK resets the cellular death cycle so they can die. Die! Inhibits 25 genes that people can be born with that predispose them to having cancer. The GHK inhibits those genes. Of course, we talked about genomic instability earlier in that slide. So that is, something happens, radiation, chemical exposure, just normal bodily processes. The GHK repairs the DNA so that then that cell doesn't mutate, or the gene doesn't mutate into a cancer cell. So, the clock is ticking. How many remember in My Cousin Vinny when she says, "My biological clock keeps ticking, ticking, ticking"? Anybody remember that? Okay, I was hoping I wasn't the only guy. So it's ticking. So how do we get the GHK copper peptide? One of my good personal friends, Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, just wrote the book called A Better Way to Treat Cancer. We were in the same clinic for 5 years, and unbeknownst to each other, he wrote that book while I wrote mine, and then we got together and took a picture together. But he uses infusions of the GHK in his cancer protocols. He does integrative cancer care, alternative cancer care, and he uses actual IV drips to help inhibit the cancer. You can get injections. I talked to Kim Look. She and her husband have an educational thing called MedMasters. They teach alternative docs how to use a lot of different alternative methods, but she was giving herself injections of GHK. Or you can use this little tiny patch that signals your body to increase your own GHK copper peptide. So we're going to be talking about, for the next few minutes, the X39 photobiomodulation patch. That's what I was talking about, the phototherapy patch. When my friend came and said, "Hey, what do you know about stem cells?" I said, "Well, I've had them in both knees. I've had stem cell injections. My cost for a little vial that big of stem cells was $2,500 each as a physician." He said, what if you could elevate your own stem cells by wearing a little phototherapy patch? And the fact that he said phototherapy patch, well, how in the heck is that a phototherapy? So that's what I'm going to explain in a few minutes. So to determine the potential benefits of wearing that patch, turn to the literature, the scientific research that's been going on since 1977. We don't make claims about what the patch does. Turn to the literature about that. So there was a study done, published in Internal Medicine Research, Volume 6, Issue 1, March, what was that, 2021? Hold on. Yeah. Double randomized placebo-controlled study of blood tests. And this is what they found. It was to determine the level if it raised the GHK. That's the study that was presented to the US Patent Office to get the patent for this technology. So this is how it worked. 60 people, 1 tube of blood was drawn, more blood taken at 24 hours and 7 days. A significant increase in GHK was found in the participants compared to the control group. So we know wearing that patch elevates the GHK in your bloodstream. The literature says all this stuff about what happens. So what does it do? It's made of organic nanocrystals. That'll become more clear in just a minute. Formulated to activate your copper peptide, which reactivates your own stem cells. We saw that from the research on how stem cells can become zombie cells. So what happens when you put one of these on? And in order to help you understand what actually happens when you place that on, I want you to first imagine you walk out in the sun, And everybody knows when you walk out in the sun, you get vitamin D, right? So how do you get it? Is it in the air? Is it in the UV light? No. We have trillions of nanoantennas in our skin. They receive frequencies. That's why you can go into a party and you're kind of scanning. That's why we have eyes and why we can interpret things. We're looking for threats. Realize it or not, we're looking for threats. And we can feel that dude gives me heebie-jeebies. Tell me if you've never experienced that. Everybody does. We have trillions of nanoantennas in our skin. They're there to interpret frequencies. When we go out in the sun, the frequency of the UV light hits those antennas. The signal tells our body, start up the vitamin D factory. We make our own vitamin D. That's how it works. So you get sunlight here, and then you make vitamin D3. Pretty cool. So the next step to understanding how they work, I want you to imagine you go into a jewelry store, and we got to go back. Hold on. You can probably kind of tell that there are bright lights shining on these diamonds. They want them to pop. And we want to see all those different colors. And then you see this, and thank you for the prop. Thank you, Cammie and Tracy. So you got a little pinky ring right here. So we have, you see colors. What is that? The diamonds are clear. I'm seeing orange and red and green and blue and all these colors. Well, the facets of the diamond separate out or refract. That's what it means. It's like a prism into individual wavelengths, which are interpreted as colors by our eyes and our brain. It has to go through our eyes and clear back here into the occipital lobes. Hey, look at all those colors. In 2009, researchers figured out that we humans glow. We actually emit visible light. And when I said this to my wife the first time, I said, we just can't see it with our eyes. And she said, if it's visible, how come you can't see it? And I said, okay, it's not bright enough to see with our eyes. Machines and computers can see it, but we actually glow. This is what is used to power the patch. So the patch is the diamond. Our body is the bright white light. The patch refracts out, separates out into a frequency that it goes into your body and it signals your body to make more GHK. So the human body is the power source. So we put them on specific points in the body. These are acupuncture points. Some of the benefits, oops, I gotta go back. Rapid pain relief, reduced inflammation, supports wound healing, vitality and energy. Remember about mitochondrial function? Mental clarity, sports performance, remember, enhances oxygen in a workout. Faster recovery from exercise. That's for the effect it has against oxidative stress. Improved skin appearance. All of these things are benefits from that. So we wear them 12 hours on and 12 hours off. That's often a question that gets asked. Why do we do that? Well, in any light therapy, our body stops responding after a certain amount of time. I have lasers in my clinic, and the laser therapy may be 2 minutes. I could leave it on for an hour, but not much is going to happen that wouldn't have already happened in 2 minutes. So after 12 hours, our body stops responding. The patch will last about 24 hours. So if you have a pet or a plant, if you take it off of you and put it on them, it'll do the same thing for them. The company doesn't say we treat pets or anything like that. All over the world, this is the world's strongest man right here. All over the world, athletes are using the patches. It started with Michael Phelps and the U.S. swim team. This is David Beckham. They were accused of doping. Why do you think most of them got their personal best times? They were actually using the first patch from this company. This actually means a lot to me because this little boy, this 6-year-old, lost his fingertip, and the surgeon refused to sew it back on because he said it's going to die because there's no capillaries in there. You can't get blood into it. No oxygen is going to get in there. The dad said, I'm going to take responsibility. I have this stem cell activation patch. So the surgeon agreed. Wrong button, sorry. It died. That's what the black is. That's black of necrosis. But the GHK stimulates capillary growth because there's no oxygen. Remember that? Hypoxia. And this kid, you can see a little indentation on that fingernail, but he kept it. Well, I showed this at an energy healing conference in St. George. And then a year and a half later, this woman reaches out to me on Facebook. She goes, oh my gosh, a friend of my cousin, little boy, lost his finger. And I saw that picture you had. And so I reached out to her, and she used them. 5 surgeons refused to sew that fingertip back on. They finally found one. And that little boy saved his finger. So I love ripple effects like that. Effect on skin, you see right here. Big difference. This was 2 years, so you don't expect that overnight. This is actually a personal friend of mine. He had a Mohs procedure, hardly can't even tell, and this skin thing started to fade. That's one of the effects of the GHK. I don't think we have time now, but there are a lot of before and after pictures they can show you out by going to this website. Couple more of the benefits, things that happen. They'll show you this out front as well. I mentioned the 6-week organ function. Briefly, I want to tell you what happened with me because it's life-changing and kind of rare. When I first started elevating my peptide back in 2020, I did not know I had a right bundle branch block. If you don't know what that is, that has to do with the conductivity to the right ventricle. That's where your blood has already come back to the heart, and then it gets pumped out to the lungs, and then back, and then out to the body. All-cause mortality goes up if you have one of those. It's not just one thing. Conductivity to the right ventricle. And here's the timeline. I knew I had PVCs when I was in high school. I was a distance runner. They don't affect you when you're running. But at rest, it would skip a beat. How many of you have PVCs, if I might ask? Do you know what they are? I see some heads nodding. So I started using the X39. I had a knee replacement surgery coming up in August because I was a crazy skier. The PVCs became really rhythmic. Every 5th beat, day and night, day and night, day and night. I was waking up in the night gasping for air because every 5th beat I was stopping for a second. And then it would start back up. So I said, man, I got this knee replacement surgery coming up. I need to go see a cardiovascular cardiologist. Had the first stress echo done, came back, he says, you have a right bundle branch block and these PVCs. And I said, well, what causes that? He says, well, all parts of our body have apoptosis. Your body kills off cells that are old and dying, and they die, and you can't replace them fast enough in the heart because it's beating all the time. And the light went on. I said, I know what's happening. I elevated my stem cells at a high enough level. 2 weeks later, the PVCs were gone. And then I had, this is my first stress echo. You can see right bundle branch block right there. The second one right there, I'm going to zoom in. Right bundle branch block no longer present. 2 different doctors have said they've never seen one of those go away. What have you been doing? Then I got this. Looks great. Steady was normal. No issues. So if a right bundle branch block increases all-cause mortality, that means my grandkids, my kids, my wife are going to have grandpa, husband, father around a lot longer, which is really meaningful to me. This is when I first started using them. My hair started turning more brown from back to front, like that. It was kind of weird. A friend actually told me that. So I put this slide up here. When I saw it, I said, this is perfect because You already have the power that powers the patch. Your body is emitting it out into your surrounding. That patch captures some of that and then reflects it back into you. To me, that's the most brilliant biohack I've ever heard of. So you are not at the whim of the external forces. You are the force. So what I say is, I know what I want to be when I get older. I want to be younger. Okay. Who was patched? Okay. Who wants to be first? I'm just going to ask you. Okay. So what was your pain level when you started?
Me?
Yes, sorry.
It's usually a 10 all the time.
A 10 all the time? Was there any change?
I haven't noticed anything yet.
Okay. Thank you for being honest. Everybody's a little bit different. Some people have pain that is like all the time and has to do with, is it coming from a muscle? Is it coming from a tendon? Is it coming from a bursa? And you also? No.
Well, I got patched outside, not the,
I passed from the X-39 and EON.
sorry.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So you started at a what?
I started at about a 10.
About a 10? Wow, that's a lot. And what is it now?
Well, I can barely feel it.
Well, that's good. That's more than half then.
Yep.
So rate that, even if you need to take a second. Rate it now compared to your 10.
Maybe a 3.
I'll go with that. I did one of these last week in Boise, and a woman had been in an auto accident 4 months prior, and she tried to make her way out to the back of the room. She walked in like this and then started crying because she didn't hurt anymore. Would anyone else like to share? Yes, ma'am.
I didn't have a lot of pain, but I have scoliosis. So sometimes the lower part of my back will hurt, like when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I can still function. I'm a ballroom dancer, but I can still function. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to see what that patch would do. I have absolutely no pain. I have no soreness or anything. And I didn't really have what you call pain. I just had that aching soreness.
And you forget about that because you just deal with it. If I want to go about my life, I'm going to have to include that in my expectations, but I'm just going to push forward, right? Let me tell you something about pain. If you have pain that's waking you up at night, you are at risk for Alzheimer's. Here's why. It interrupts your sleep pattern. We're supposed to go through 5 1.5 hour sleep cycles. At one point during each one of those 5 cycles, your body uses it to say, get rid of all that gunk out of his brain, for heaven's sakes. Out, out, out. If that doesn't happen, those things start to build up in your brain, those proteins. And so consider that. Pain that wakes you up at night is not just about the pain. It's about your future and that cognitive, that disappearance of oneself. So consider that. Does anybody else want to contribute? Yes, sir.
So I've got 2 challenges. I've got a considerable headache most of the time, and I'm going to say it was about an 8, and I'm going to say it's a 7. But more remarkable is, I saw a slide that you had here was anxiety. My anxiety was an 8, and I'm about a 5.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
8 to a 5. So I deal with people. He said he had headaches most of the time, and
8 to 7.
that went from 8 to a 7, so a slight decrease in his headache in an hour. But the big thing was his anxiety went down from a 8 to a 5. That's a big deal. It's not one of those rats where it decreased aggression. not implying anything. Just kidding. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I actually
didn't notice a difference until I noticed that my left side was hurting. I thought it felt like my left side was hurting more. And I'm like, oh, that's just regular pain. I'm not feeling pain on one side. So, yeah, I definitely feel like it made a difference.
So your pain was what before?
It's pretty consistent because I have hip dysplasia, and then I also fell a few weeks ago, so I'm having pain all the way up my spine. So I'm probably about an 8 or a 9. I'd say it's about like a 5 or a 6.
8 or a 9 to a 5 or a 6. That's awesome. So it's interesting, thank you. And people come walking in, and when we meet people, we don't say, "Hi, my name's John. I'm at an 8." We don't hear that. So many people are walking around in severe pain. If I had pain at an 8 or a 9, I would probably be a little wimpier than than you came and so changing that in somebody's life is not just about the pain. It's about that person being able to live out their fullest expression of their life and not going into cognitive decline and losing one's sense of self. So, I tell you, go out and get patched. Go out and patch people. Thank you so much. You've been great. I appreciate you, your participation, and your friendliness. And not throwing things, just kidding. We're going to be out there. Any of those who want to get the book, they weren't doing it before, you can do that after, and I'll be out there to answer questions. I think, Cammie, is that right?
Yes, but first we have...
Oh, yeah. That's right. Hold on one second. I forgot to put I want to show you how quick the patches work. So hold on. I'm going to go put my patches on. Just a second. Just go out and say, "Wow, I feel so much better." Tell him you're going to... Okay, say, "Man, I feel great." Okay, let's all go out. So I want to thank Cammie and Tracy for arranging this for us to come dressed alike. Thanks a lot, you guys.
You can announce about the break and that we're going to resume.
All right, I'm going to turn on my magic ring.
Yes.
And who are we bringing up now?
Does anybody have any questions for the doctor?
Yeah, when should you wear it? Morning or night? I mean, daytime or nighttime?
Good question. All of the patches, with the exception of 2, can be worn day or night. We didn't talk about it, but there's a patch called the Energy Enhancer. You probably won't want to wear that right before you go to bed. That's the one, without going into a lot of detail. Basically, remember that we talked about the mitochondria? It signals the mitochondria to open up the fat burning door. So we'll burn 300 to 600 calories more per day for a sustained amount of energy. It's not touted as a weight loss, but those are the actual patches the U.S. men's Olympic swim team used. Energy Enhancer, that's why they got their best times way back with Michael Phelps. Wear them in the daytime. And interesting, sometimes you don't realize things are happening until somebody tells you something. And I had this experience last year. I'd been using the energy enhancers for probably 3 years at the time. And I went in to get my hair cut, and usually the guy who cuts my hair right next to me, my barber, was busy. We used to talk a lot when he wasn't as busy, but he was always busy. So for several years, I didn't get a chance to talk to him. And then this one time he wasn't busy, and we started chatting, and he said, after we talked a little bit, he said, "You don't fall asleep anymore." Oh my gosh, I used to fall asleep every single time I would get my hair cut, and I didn't realize that had changed. He told me it had changed. So sometimes things happen and you don't really notice. My friend had to tell me, "Do you realize your hair's turning brown?" And I said, "No, it's not." He said, "Yeah, it's in the back." And I said, "Well, I don't look at the back." So then I bent forward, she took the picture of it. Now I still have a little gray, who cares? So sometimes, consider this. The GHK starts to repair all of our collagen, not just the skin. The bone matrix is made of collagen. That's what gives it strength. By the way, it's not calcium. Calcium, an increase in calcium in your bones makes your bones more brittle. So I'm sorry to say, if anybody you know is on one of those bone strengthening drugs, check the side effects. One of the side effects is an increase in hip fractures, like Fosamax. It causes more calcium to be deposited in your bones. Calcium is chalk. Calcium carbonate is chalk. It's the protein matrix that gives you strength in the bone, and then you need phosphorus and a lot of other stuff to make strong bones. Our vessels are made of collagen and elastin. Our skin, our hair, our organs are all made from collagen, a collagen matrix. So if you start increasing your GHK, it's just not about your symptoms. You don't know I didn't even know I had a right bundle branch block. Had I not had 2 stress echoes, here's what would have happened. I didn't know I had one. It went away. I would never have known I even had it. Yet I wouldn't have to live with that the rest of my life. So consider, if you're considering starting to use that patch, if you really want to measure something, you got to be measuring it. So if somebody says, well, I'm going to use them for a month, I say, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's establish what you're going to be measuring. What are you going to be measuring? Well, my knee hurts. Well, that's easy. And when that goes away, you'll notice that. I thought you were going to be doing kidney filtration and your blood chemistry and liver function tests and bone density tests. You're talking about pain. That is measurable, right? Unless you're measuring all this other stuff, you don't know what you had or that it went away. But here's what I can tell you. If you have a disorder or diseases that we don't treat, I'm not saying we treat those things. Here's what I can tell you with 100% certainty. Your doctor's prognosis did not include, she's going to be increasing her stem cell production every day. It changes every outcome. I don't care what it is. I'm not making promises, and I'm not your doctor. I am a doctor, but not your doctor. But I can tell you, if you are increasing your stem cell production, no matter what diagnosis it is, the prognosis or outcome of that is going to change. I have personally interviewed people who had something for 60 years. Rose Holmberg, you probably know her. I got to interview her like 3 years ago. She had rheumatoid arthritis since she was in high school or younger, because she'd had it for 60 years. She couldn't pull her sheet over her body because her hands hurt so bad. Her husband had to pull it up. When I interviewed her back then, she had had no pain for 1.5 years. And people would say, did it cure her? And I said, who cares? She's probably not going to go back to get an official diagnosis, but if she has no symptoms, who cares? So I've always looked at things like simple. What is more to the core, more to the core, more to the core? And stem cells are the core. That's where the whole thing starts, with repair and regeneration. Any more questions? You raised your hand first. You were quick to the draw, so you got first.
Have you ever dealt with someone that's pretty severe, that's had an acquired brain injury plus later a traumatic brain injury, and their behavior showed that the brain's hemispheres were not communicating?
There are several things going on there. We have patients in my clinic like that. When something happens, whether it's a head trauma, chemical trauma, or emotional upset, there's a sequence of events that happen. First, your fight or flight goes, something's going on, I don't know what it is, but all hands on deck, I gotta get out of here. So it's your fight or flight, right? Your autonomic nervous system, increased heart rate, increased adrenaline, increased superhuman vision. I got to see the tiger in the reeds. That's why they have stripes, to hide. I have to have that. But the first thing that happened is anxiety. Part of that system. So my anxiety turns on, heart rate, adrenaline, blood pressure, at the expense of the other emergency system we have in our body. What is that? There's food in your stomach! I can't pay attention to any of that out here. I got to focus on this. I got to shunt the blood around my digestive tract. I can't run a marathon. I can't be really active because I have to slow things down so that I can absorb food. And I'm going to have everybody finish this sentence. I'll bet you anything your mom said this to you. Don't go swimming right after you eat. Mom's figured it out. It aptly describes the fight or flight, rest, digest. If this goes up, this goes down. If this goes up, this goes down. It's called reciprocal inhibition. If I just ate, I ain't going to be running a marathon. If my fight or flight is on, I'm not going to be able to shut off my busy mind because there's a tiger out there somewhere. And I got to see him, so now I have dilated pupils. That turns into OCD. If it stays on, I notice, oh, there's a speck right there on the floor. You know the person, might be your spouse, notices everything. So that system stays on. The reason I bring that up is that causes other hubs and networks to get disconnected. So it's not always that some function is lost because the neurons died. It's about reconnecting the hubs. It's like a dysfunctional couple. You got to get them talking. Oh, okay. I thought you didn't want me to talk. Now you're telling me to talk. So now we're talking to each other, and things can start to work. But also neuroplasticity. You got the X39, GHK. GHK activates regeneration of those neurons that have been lost. We help speed that process up with cold laser. Cold laser actually activates energy production in the mitochondria and the brain cells. Activates regeneration and activates communication. So we check boxes with that, and microcurrent neurofeedback. That's putting little leads on the head and sending in 3 trillionths of a watt of delta waves. Delta waves run the show in the brainstem. I did the quantitative EEGs brain mapped in my office for 5 years, and I noticed a recurring theme. Everyone had lost power in their brainstem where the parasympathetic nervous system is because of the overactive fight or flight. It inhibits parasympathetic. You with me so far? It's like Big Brother's got his foot on the neck of the little brother. Mom's not going to be home for 5 hours. You're mine. So sympathetic, parasympathetic, so that can't work. All parts of the body get dual input. Sometimes you got to speed it up, sometimes you got to slow it down. Except 14 functions that only get nerves from parasympathetic. That's what I test in my office to confirm whether or not someone is stuck in sympathetic freeze. Everything we do in my office is designed to bring balance to that system because now you get a reconnection of the other things that were dysfunctioning because I'm stuck in fight or flight. So I can't work other stuff because there's a tiger out there somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I notice everything and I'm on high alert. Can't shut off my busy mind at night because the tiger's still chasing me. I have to see him. I have to be on alert or whatever it is. Or it could be like having a tyrant for a boss and there's these microaggressions all day long, or a narcissistic spouse, gaslighter. That's like constant siege. That's like a military person. Hypervigilance. I got to be on high alert all the time. Well, your fight or flight's supposed to go up, and you come back down. Go up, come back down. I eat, the opposite goes up, and then comes back down. If you take enough hits Now it's stuck like that. Now I have gut issues. Can't do this. I don't care how many probiotics or digestive enzymes somebody takes. If the brain's telling you it ain't time to digest food right now, you're not going to digest food. Doesn't matter. Same thing's true with sleep. If your brain is stuck in fight or flight, you cannot sleep normally. And you can't shut your mind off. It just keeps going and going. So anyway, sorry that was a little bit lengthy, but I thought it would be interesting because part of that brain injury is that.
So it sounds multi.
It's not that simple.
Health, like you have to
Correct.
do brain stimulation, you gotta do, what was the X39, and then the cold laser helps,
Right. Microcurrent. So, you know, the movies where there's shock therapy, there's always screaming involved. You're down a dark hallway and you can hear them clear down there. Ah! So this has come full circle to 3 trillionths of a watt. It's imperceptible to humans. You cannot feel the electric stim because it's normal delta waves, but it goes in and nudges the brainstem and says, hey, fellas, wake up. You're doing it wrong. Oh, sorry about that. So that is untraining the brainstem from the faulty pattern. That's why I shifted from the older style neurofeedback, which trains the brain over a very long period of time, 40 to 60 sessions. Untraining the brainstem from the faulty pattern and waking it up, kind of like turning off your computer and your software starts back up at 10 to 20 sessions. Mm-hmm. There's a 5% or outside of that, 10 to 20, that would be severe cognitive decline or severely autistic. And we have both come into the office. The first autistic kid we treated who was on this program in Idaho called Katie Beckett program, named after somebody's daughter who was severely autistic, and they put up a lot of money to help other families. This kid had POTS, positional orthostatic tachycardia. So one of the things I test when somebody comes in is the blood pressure sensors in your carotids. If you can't sense your blood pressure when you stand up, holy cow, I can't maintain my blood pressure to get oxygen to my brain. My heart rate has to shoot up. So the heart rate, as soon as they stand up, the heart rate will shoot up. And they'll faint. So this kid, 15-year-old kid, was in bed for 3 years. He could not get out of bed without fainting. And he's not really verbal, you know, he's autistic. So his mom sent us a video of him skiing after we were finished with treating. So that got the attention of the Katie Beckett program. So all they require from me now is a letter. And they send their kids in. So anyway, that's how effective we've been. When I had the severe emotional things back in 2010 to 2012, we had a suicide and a murder and another death in my family. That shook us to the core, so much so that I went on a journey to try to find things to fix my daughter's brains and my grandkids whose daddy had been murdered. And anxiety, depression, insomnia, prescription drugs weren't working, counseling wasn't working. So then I went on a mission and I was able to go functional neurology, laser therapy, neurofeedback, and then cherry pick the things out that activate that balance. Yes, ma'am.
I have scoliosis. At first, I was told I was born with it. Later on, a chiropractor said, no, you must have received some damage as a young child. So anyway, I've had this scoliosis for quite a while. And so I understand you have something in your product line that addresses scoliosis?
I've seen pictures, and I'm friends with a gal whose pictures were posted. And sometimes your body is holding you in what we call an antalgic position. It's the least painful position of your spine. If you can change the pain pattern, sometimes it lets go of that holding you like that.
I don't really have pain, so it's just, but I noticed now that I do a lot more reading, I'm not moving as much, so my scoliosis is getting more obvious because I'm not as physical. So, yeah.
There isn't a patch, or there aren't patches that are specifically designed to treat any condition. We say this patch is supportive for this or supportive for that, but they don't treat scoliosis. But the patches that I would use to assist in helping to normalize your body's response would be X39. X39 is the one that elevates GHK because of all of the benefits in collagen. You know, collagen is weak when it's all stretched out. Now we got to repair that. But also using LifeWave because it changes your heat signature. So it changes the energy patterns is what it does.
So you said X39 and isolate?
LifeWave. That's where I would start. Question?
So,
Looks like she's giving me the hint.
yeah, one more question.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have 2 or 3 questions so we can get to it. Is there a deficiency in copper? If that's a deficiency, would the X39 still work? Or it's never measured in metabolic testing in laboratory.
Right. So there's 2 things. Thank you for that question, by the way. If you're going to make GHK copper peptide, one must increase your intake of copper because it's a raw material to make copper peptide. Another question similar to that would be, people have asked me before, they say, you know, I thought copper was toxic, and you know, you get toxic copper in the brain. It's one of the predisposing factors to having Alzheimer's. Early on, when I started using this, I had this idea, if somebody doesn't have enough GHK to hold on to the copper, see, it's not free copper anymore in your brain. It's in the copper peptide. The peptide doesn't release the copper until it's needed. So I have no proof of that, but that's just what I thought. If I don't have enough GHK, I'm not going to be making neurons because it escorts copper through the blood-brain barrier, and it holds on to it until it's needed. So you're not going to have free copper floating around that would be toxic. So an excess in copper is toxic, but a deficit of copper is also bad. The GHK helps normalize that.
And do you measure copper in average patients, or only when they don't work? Does it work all the time?
I haven't. I actually reached out to a blood lab and asked them if they could make a saliva or urine GHK test strip. They got back to me in about 10 days, said, we've researched this, there are not enough people asking about GHK, so it's too expensive for us to do this. We wouldn't get our money back, so I'm still working on that. Wouldn't that be cool? Test my GHK with a blood, saliva, or urine test.
In menopause, would stem cells increase in the ovarian function, and would you get elevated estrogen, testosterone hormones?
There are no studies about that, so that would be...
But in practice, have you seen?
I don't, that's not part of what I do, so I haven't seen anything like that. Yeah,
So
I'm
we will
probably
have
some.
another segment talking about the other patches, and we do have some testimonies and stories about people's experiences
What, have you heard of that?
with the patches. And I've done extensive study onto what patch product causes what to be stimulated in your body. So I'm happy to answer questions and share the studies with you. Dr. Harmon brought a boatload of books with him today, and we would love for you to have the opportunity to purchase those books and things. We have had a delightful time listening from the doctor, and we would love to invite you to stay for our next segment. He will still be here. But we would love for, since we'll switch up our schedule a little bit, we're all like taking notes. It's delightful. So we have door prizes to share with people, and I know some of you didn't even get checked in, and that is how you receive the opportunity to win the door prize. So guests, especially if you have not filled out your little card, Tracy will be at the door. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then return and share a little bit more about the different patch products and LifeWave. and then provide an opportunity at the end for Dr. Harmon to sell books and answer more questions.
Tammy, if we don't have time to stand in line to get a book, can we get it online?
Yes,
It's on Amazon.
it's on Amazon. Or you can see me later. There might be extras. Everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Harmon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.